Um, so I'm going to talk about the program, and I'd like to take two angles on it. First of all, to give a bit of a framework about how we structured it pedagogically and some of the thinking behind what takes place in the program. So first of all, the program is structured over 4 modules. Those modules run for 2 days, and they are very long days. And we begin with a journey that takes us back to the root of things. So as Manny was describing, the importance of underpinning and unpicking history is really significant. So we go back to Plato, the classics, Aristotle, Socrates, and looking at what we were picking up from antiquity about how people governed and what people thought about governing and how you trained and developed people to govern and to lead. So Plato's Republic and some of the narratives in there about how you develop the philosopher kings, which we might well say many of our board members represent in our contemporary time. And then we go through the beginnings of the psychoanalytic thought and the history behind some of the psychoanalytic thinking. So this idea of the unconscious, that there are thoughts, feelings, emotions that we have that we are not aware of, and that those can translate, impact, and alter how we behave in relation to what we consciously think we're trying to do. So classic thought and its development into the contemporary, and we structure it in a way that is completely experiential. There's no teaching as such on the program, because how we take up our stance as the directors is to say that we bring our perspective on the readings, we bring our perspectives on our client work, and that those perspectives, together with the participants, we create a shared patchwork that we can think about what we, as a collection of people present in the room, or with the last cohort present online, what do we make of what we're encountering, so that there's no privileging of the teacher's perspective. So in a way, before it became popular, we were decolonizing our curriculum. So having taken that stance, we travel the journey, and it's very stressful because many people come with the primal need to be fed, and the program is challenging that feeding urge and saying, dig within yourself, both your experience in the program, your experience of the readings, and your intermodular space, to find what the board construct means for you, and to pay attention to what you're experiencing in the boardroom, in the program, and how that will give you an indicator of what the boards that you either work with, consult to, or chair, what's happening in the board. Because we have this rational assumption that with the right knowledge, we will all be able to say and do the right things. But we know that there is an underflow of corruption and collusion that pulls us into often paying attention to how do we belong? How do we maintain the esteem of the rest of the board, rather than thinking about our role as directors and consultants, coaches, leaders in the boardroom. So that takes me to this point about the director. So the term director, if we look historically, came in, I think, 1694, and it was first used to describe those people who sat in the Bank of England. And I think linked with Manny's point about the financial crisis and what came up and the need for thinking about what happens in boards, it's a really significant point that prior to that, boards or joint stock companies were driven by committees, and they were called committees because not as we know committees today, but people who had committed resources to help the company achieve its purposes. So there is embedded in the idea of the corporate board a safeguarding of profit, and often, because they were large corporate entities linked to governments, about protecting the monopolies that the colonial powers were seeking to develop, harvest, and control. So the City of London has a very extensive ancient network of guilds, many of whom went on to become commercial corporate companies. And the way that they are governed is still enshrined in law today. So the European model has crossed the globe as companies, joint stock companies, have sought to harvest the resources of other nations. And so when we're thinking about corporate boards and what happens in them, they are a uniquely European construct that opens up a chance for us to think about the relationship between Europe and the rest of the world. And why it's so important now is that in many ways, it seems that the world is taking the lid off of many of the myths that we've all taken to live as truths. And so the journey of deconstructing what is myth and what is reality, and how do we operate within a shared construction, certainly in the boardroom, is part of the journey that I look forward to working with all of you in various guises as we go forward. Thank you.